Even though I think there's some sense of like not wanting to forget my thoughts and needing to write a list down um, about what I want to talk about, which I think could be applicable in some certain things. But for this one, I want to talk conscriptively and I want to allow myself to feel the way that I feel in the moment. So, I kind of want to talk about particularly why I see what I see. And that's a really complicated topic for me. And I think it may be a complicated topic for many, 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 many people before they judge themselves. And I'll start here. I see a lot of magic in the air. I see evil itself, as sort of a dance around of the campfire, so to say. At least in the way that we interpret evil nowadays. Anyway, um, I think that the magic kind of consists of the human element. And we have a habit scientifically of anthropomorphizing like everything, and then we put a sexual nature to like small things like competitiveness or defensiveness or protectiveness, or things that could potentially be virtues. And I I have trouble trying to articulate the words here, but like I see the beauty of science as a divine magical nature. We have to like, and I use those words relatively loosely. I don't mean like what you may picture in your head as magic and divine. No, I mean like it's beyond what I can understand at such a level that there's no other explanation to me. And I'm sure everyone has different levels in that sense. But anyway, my point that I'm trying to get to is, here's my story, right? I had a lot of trauma in my childhood, including, you know, things of privation and ruin and betrayal, and even some form of an abandonment that I knew was unjustified. Like, it got very complicated for me. And I had to essentially, it's hard to explain. It's like as if I was raising children that I wasn't prepared to raise. Something like that. Like, my mother had to leave, and it put me in a place where, I had to like do something for my brothers because the only thing that I had was grandparents that are so beyond the generational range of the internet and video games and like modern story and music and pop culture. They don't hardly recognize the world, right? So I was leaned on by both myself and of my grandparents and of my mother, who had no specific connection at the time. But I know retrospectively and consiling with what happened, I know that she was thinking of them. But anyway, so it's like when all else fails, and not many people that haven't had that kind of failure understand this, when all else fails, the only thing you have is the story that you put your foots into. Which is very telling about how fundamental that is, right? not necessarily agreeable, not necessarily, you know, perfect, not necessarily good in all intents, you know? But you have to put your foot somewhere, right? And your imagination is what is planted. That your imagination is that which is seeded by this transformation of collective happenstance and personal truth. And I don't know, you get to a point where if you're crazy enough, you start mixing like the reliance on the religious side and the undisagreeableness or inevitableness even of the scientific picture. And for a very long time, I have struggled to put together these two ideals. I think if we think about the political system and how there's extremists, there is that in the atheist and religious sense, as well as the scientific and mythological sense. There are always extremes. Always. Stop fighting it. Stop pretending you're not extreme. Stop pretending that you're not motivated towards something. Stop pretending that you have justice on your side. So, my argument is to say that something like, we can disagree about everything in the world. We could. We could. You have to be able and cognizant of that fact very specifically. Because that tells you what your ego is doing. That tells you what you're fighting. Yeah? Does that make sense? So, I know I'm kind of like tripping through essentially perspective gates right now in talking about those. Right? But, like, man, there is so much more beauty and joy and love. Like, god damn it, love, man, in this world than people realize. And we have this fear-mongering, cancel culture, you know, fucking separationist, I forget what you call that when you, stereotypical type of thing going on that makes no fucking sense to me, firmly. However, and you know, sense is different from rationale. From, like, to some degree, I can understand why it's happening and kind of like where it came from and how that affects us, you know, and how much that hurts to be in that place, you know. But to a specific argument, I would argue that if you don't see magic in the world, you're doing it wrong. And you know, I'm being very blatant and platitudinal with that phrasing, but you know, like, how else could you balance yourself in the world? Like, even if you don't do it very well and you judge yourself for it, like, there has to be some theology to your identity. You know, we argue theology is this big theory-based mythic thing, and then we call, you know, scientific theories because they're theories. And, you know, it's like, how do you think you know about who you are? You form these assumptions based on experience. You form these connections that make you a little bit more real, but don't necessarily tell you the whole story. And I'm still doing the perspective gate thing, right? There is only so much you can do only so much you can grasp, but you always want more. That's what's important. So if we get serious and mature about that, that means kind of giving ourselves the opportunities that we're disregarding out of endless opinion. I think I've kind of put my point out there. So I think I'm going to stop there. If you listen, thank you for listening. Bye now.